Men over 50, top 5 meats that support testosterone and romantic strength. Gentlemen, I want you to stop for a moment and ask yourself this. When was the last time you woke up feeling like the strongest version of yourself? Full of energy, sharp in the mind, confident in the bedroom? If your answer is, it's been a while, you're not alone. Now, some people will tell you, hey, low testosterone is just part of aging. Accept it. Others argue, no. You can absolutely fight back, but only with pills, shots, or expensive supplements. I've spent over 4 decades treating men, and I can tell you, both of those views are wrong. Because here's the surprising truth. One of the most powerful ways to support testosterone, rebuild your energy, and yes, bring back your romantic strength, is sitting right there on your dinner plate. And I'm not talking about exotic herbs from the Himalayas or overpriced powders. I'm talking about everyday meats, foods you can find at your local grocery store, that most men overlook, yet they hold the key to keeping you strong, sharp, and vibrant after 50. But before we dive into the 5 best meats that can change the way you feel, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, share this video with a friend who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe. Every click gives us the motivation to keep creating more science-backed, life-changing health videos just for you. Trust me, you're going to want to stick with me until the very end because meat number 1? It's been considered an aphrodisiac for centuries, and now modern science finally proves why. So grab your seat, get comfortable, and let's uncover the 5 powerhouse meats that can help men over 50 not just survive aging, but thrive with strength, confidence, and passion. Why testosterone declines after 50? As a physician who has worked with men for more than 4 decades, and as someone now in his 70s, I've seen firsthand what happens when testosterone begins to fade. Most men think testosterone is only about sex drive, but in truth, it is the master switch for male health. It determines how much lean muscle you can build, how much fat collects around your belly, how sharp your mind feels, how strong your bones stay, how much energy carries you through the day, and yes, the quality of your romantic life. Starting in your 30s, testosterone begins to decline at about 1% each year. That may sound small, but it adds up. By the time you reach 50, many men have lost 20 to 30% of their natural testosterone. By 60, the loss can be closer to 40 or even 50%. The Massachusetts Male Aging Study found that nearly 39% of men over 60 already live with clinically low testosterone, and that number only rises with age. Low testosterone, often called low T, isn't just about the bedroom. It's tied to higher risks of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, depression, and even earlier death. A large study published in the Archives of Internal Medicine showed that men with low testosterone had about a 40% higher risk of dying over an 18-year period. That's not just a number. It's a reminder that hormones drive far more than desire. So let me ask you this. When you notice your energy dipping, your waistline expanding, or your motivation slipping, do you brush it off as just getting older? Or do you see it as a warning sign that your testosterone might need support? Because the truth is, your body hasn't forgotten how to make testosterone. It simply needs the right fuel. And that brings us to diet. Science now shows that lifestyle choices, especially what you eat, can slow testosterone decline and sometimes even reverse it. Meat is more than just protein. Certain meats are rich in zinc, vitamin D, healthy fats, carnitine, and amino acids, nutrients your body must have to produce testosterone and keep it flowing. But not all meats are equal. Some will nourish your hormones, others will quietly sabotage them through inflammation, excess chemicals, and poor nutrient profiles. So the real question becomes, is the meat on your plate helping your testosterone or hurting it? After treating thousands of men and walking this path myself, I can tell you that choosing wisely makes all the difference. In the next section, we'll uncover the 5 best meats to keep in your rotation if you want to stay strong, sharp, and romantically alive well past 50. Meat number 5, turkey, the lean powerhouse. Turkey is often overlooked outside of Thanksgiving, but in reality it deserves a regular place on the plates of men over 50. Most people think of it as a bland holiday bird, yet turkey, especially turkey breast, is one of the leanest, cleanest, and most effective proteins for supporting testosterone and overall vitality. Protein is the foundation of hormone health. Your body cannot build or maintain testosterone without the amino acids found in protein-rich foods. Turkey delivers this in abundance without the heavy load of saturated fats you'd find in fattier cuts of meat. Maintaining lean muscle is crucial for men over 50, because muscle mass itself helps regulate hormone balance and blood sugar. Without enough protein, muscle declines, fat increases, and testosterone levels follow the same downward path. Turkey also brings something extra to the table, tryptophan. This amino acid is best known for its role in mood and sleep regulation. When your brain converts tryptophan into serotonin, it promotes feelings of calm and balance. Later, serotonin is converted into melatonin, the hormone that controls your sleep cycle. Why does that matter? Because poor sleep is one of the fastest ways to drain testosterone. In fact, a study from the University of Chicago found that young men who slept less than 5 hours per night for just 1 week saw their testosterone drop by up to 15%. Imagine what years of poor sleep can do. When you eat turkey regularly, you give your body the raw materials to support deeper sleep and stronger hormones. Another key nutrient in turkey is zinc. Zinc is a mineral directly tied to testosterone production, and deficiency is surprisingly common, especially in older adults whose diets are heavy in processed foods and light on quality protein. Clinical research has repeatedly shown that zinc deficiency can lead to hypogonadism, the medical term for low testosterone. In one well-known study, men with restricted zinc intake saw their testosterone levels fall dramatically within 6 months, while those given zinc supplementation experienced the opposite, a clear rise in hormone levels. Turkey provides zinc naturally without the need for pills. I'll give you an example from my own practice. Michael, a 62-year-old retired firefighter, came to me frustrated. He was still physically strong, but his energy was fading, his drive was slipping, and his wife noticed a change in his motivation. His diet was heavy in bread, pasta, and occasional chicken, but almost no turkey or zinc-rich foods. We made a simple adjustment, 2 turkey-based meals each week, paired with vegetables and whole grains. 3 months later, his blood work showed free testosterone up by nearly 12%. But more telling than the numbers was what Michael told me. "Doc, I wake up actually feeling rested. I haven't felt like this in years, and my wife says she can see the difference too." Now let me ask you, how often do you actually include turkey in your meals? Is it something you reserve for the holidays, or is it a regular part of your weekly menu? For many men, the answer is the former. And that's a missed opportunity because turkey may be one of the simplest, most affordable ways to support your hormones every single week. Of course, not all turkey is equal. Processed deli turkey slices are loaded with sodium, preservatives, and nitrates that can do more harm than good, especially to your heart and blood vessels. If you want the benefits, go for lean turkey breast or ground turkey with at least 93% lean meat. Cook it in healthy ways. Roast it with olive oil and herbs, stir-fry with vegetables, or make a hearty turkey chili. Avoid drowning it in heavy creams or processed sauces that undo its benefits. One more point worth noting: turkey is lower in calories than many other meats, which makes it an excellent option for men watching their weight. Carrying excess belly fat is one of the fastest ways to lower testosterone because fat tissue converts testosterone into estrogen through an enzyme called aromatase. By choosing lean, protein-rich turkey, you're not only feeding your testosterone factory, you're also helping shut down one of the main engines that destroy testosterone in the first place. Gentlemen, turkey may not be flashy. It's not the aphrodisiac food you'll read about in magazines, but it's the quiet workhorse that keeps your hormonal machinery running smoothly. And sometimes, it's the simple, consistent choices that make the biggest difference in the long run. So the next time you're at the grocery store, ask yourself, why wait until Thanksgiving to eat something that can help you feel stronger, sharper, and more alive all year round? Meat number 4, grass-fed beef, the classic testosterone booster. If turkey is the quiet worker, then beef is the old reliable friend, so long as you choose the right kind. Grass-fed beef stands out as a nutritional powerhouse for men over 50, offering a unique blend of nutrients that directly support testosterone production and overall male vitality. One of its greatest strengths is zinc. Zinc is arguably the most important mineral for testosterone, and deficiency is shockingly common among older men. Multiple studies have shown that men with low zinc intake consistently test lower in testosterone levels, while restoring zinc through diet or supplementation helps bring those levels back up. Grass-fed beef is one of the richest natural sources of zinc you can find, giving your body a steady supply without the need for pills. But zinc isn't the only gift beef provides. Grass-fed beef is naturally rich in carnitine, an amino acid that plays a critical role in fat metabolism and energy production. Carnitine helps transport fatty acids into the mitochondria, your cell's energy factories, so they can be burned for fuel. For men, this means more usable energy throughout the day and better endurance during physical activity. Research also shows that carnitine can support fertility and erectile function by improving blood flow, making it a quiet but powerful ally for romantic health. And then there's creatine. Many men think of creatine as a bodybuilder's supplement, but what they forget is that it's already present naturally in beef. Creatine improves muscle strength, supports recovery after exercise, and helps maintain lean body mass. And here's the key connection. Men with more lean muscle mass consistently have higher testosterone. It's not just about looking strong, it's about keeping your hormonal balance working in your favor. The science behind beef's benefits is compelling. A 2016 study published in Biological Trace Element Research found that men with higher zinc intake had significantly higher total testosterone levels compared to those who consumed less. Another study from the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism linked zinc deficiency not just to low testosterone, but also to poor sperm quality and reduced fertility. In other words, getting enough zinc, and beef is one of the best sources, isn't optional for men who want to stay strong and vital after 50. I've seen this play out countless times in my practice. Take Daniel, a 67-year-old who avoided red meat for years because he thought it was bad for his heart. He lived on chicken and fish, but he came to me complaining of constant fatigue, fading muscle, and a declining sex drive. We didn't overhaul his diet completely. We just added back grass-fed beef once or twice a week, focusing on lean cuts like sirloin and flank. Within a few months, Daniel's energy improved, his libido returned, and his wife pulled me aside to say, "Thank you, doctor, he's back to his old self." It wasn't a miracle drug, it was simply giving his body the nutrients it had been missing. Now let me ask you, when was the last time you ate beef without feeling guilty about it? Too many men have been told to avoid red meat entirely, but the truth is more nuanced. The danger comes from processed, grain-fed, or fatty cuts eaten in excess, not from lean, grass-fed beef enjoyed in moderation. Grass-fed beef actually contains more omega-3 fatty acids and antioxidants than conventional beef, making it far healthier for your heart and blood vessels. So here's my advice. Stick with grass-fed whenever possible. Choose lean cuts like sirloin, tenderloin, or flank steak. Keep your portions moderate, about 4 to 6 ounces 2 or 3 times a week. Avoid highly processed beef products like hot dogs and sausages that undo all the benefits with sodium, preservatives, and unhealthy fats. Beef has been demonized in recent years, but when it's chosen wisely, it's not a threat. It's an ally. For men over 50 who want to keep their testosterone levels strong, their muscles firm, and their energy steady, grass-fed beef is one of the most powerful tools you can put on your plate. The real question is, are you fueling your body with the nutrients it craves, or are you depriving it out of fear? Sometimes eating smarter doesn't mean avoiding, it means choosing the right kind. Meat number 3, bison, the forgotten super meat. Bison may not be the first thing you see at your local supermarket, but it deserves far more attention than it gets. For men over 50 looking to protect testosterone and maintain strength, bison is one of the most nutrient-dense red meats you can put on your plate. It's naturally leaner than beef, which means you get the muscle-building protein without the heavy load of saturated fats that can weigh you down. Yet despite being lean, it's packed with essential nutrients like zinc, iron, and B vitamins, all of which are critical for testosterone production, energy metabolism, and red blood cell formation. Another unique advantage of bison is its higher concentration of creatine compared to many other meats. Creatine helps your muscles perform better during physical activity, improves recovery, and supports lean mass preservation. Since testosterone and muscle mass work hand in hand, this makes bison an excellent choice for men trying to stay active, strong, and independent as they age. Unlike conventional beef, which is often grain-fed and treated with additives, bison is almost always grass-fed and pasture-raised. That makes a big difference. Grass-fed meat contains more omega-3 fatty acids and antioxidants, both of which lower inflammation and improve heart health. And here's an important detail. Chronic inflammation is one of the hidden enemies of testosterone. When your body is constantly inflamed, your hormonal signaling gets disrupted, and your testosterone factory doesn't run the way it should. By choosing bison, you're not only fueling your body with protein and minerals, but also cutting down the very processes that suppress testosterone in the first place. The science supports this. Research shows that men with higher intakes of omega-3s and iron-rich foods have more stable testosterone levels and greater endurance. B vitamins, especially B12, are directly tied to energy, nerve health, and red blood cell production. A deficiency in B12 or iron often shows up as fatigue, weakness, and brain fog, all symptoms many men blame on just getting older. But in truth, these deficiencies are preventable, and bison is an excellent way to cover those bases. I remember a patient of mine named Leonard, a 71-year-old who loved steak but always felt sluggish after eating it. He wasn't ready to give up the flavor of red meat, but he was tired of the bloated, heavy feeling that followed. I suggested he try bison burgers instead of beef. A few weeks later, he came back smiling. "Doc, I get the taste of steak, but without the food coma." His cholesterol numbers improved, his energy felt steadier, and his testosterone nudged upward too. That small switch gave him back the satisfaction of enjoying red meat without the downside. Now let me ask you, if you enjoy steak but worry about how it makes you feel, why not give bison a try? It has all the taste and satisfaction of beef, with fewer drawbacks and more upside for your hormones. If you're new to it, look for ground bison or bison steaks at farmers markets, health food stores, or specialty butchers. Keep the preparation simple. Grill or pan-sear with just salt, pepper, garlic, and a drizzle of olive oil. Cook it medium rare to preserve its nutrients and tenderness. Bison is lean, so it cooks faster than beef. Be careful not to overdo it. Bison really is the stealth fighter of testosterone meats. It's lean, nutrient-rich, loaded with the minerals and amino acids your body craves, and surprisingly delicious. The only real question is whether you're willing to step out of the routine and give this forgotten super meat a place in your kitchen. Sometimes the best solutions aren't new. They're just waiting for us to rediscover them. Meat number 2, salmon, the omega-3 powerhouse. If beef supplies zinc and muscle-building power, salmon provides something just as essential, healthy fats that act as the foundation of hormone health. Too many men have been taught to fear fat, but the truth is, the right fats are absolutely necessary for testosterone production. Wild-caught salmon is one of the richest natural sources of omega-3 fatty acids, and these fats do far more than protect your heart. They help keep your testosterone factory running smoothly. Omega-3s are powerful anti-inflammatories. Chronic inflammation interferes with the delicate communication between your brain and your testicles, essentially garbling the signals that tell your body to produce testosterone. By lowering inflammation, omega-3s allow your hormone system to function more efficiently. Salmon is also one of the best dietary sources of vitamin D, a nutrient strongly tied to testosterone levels. Men with vitamin D deficiency are far more likely to experience low testosterone, and a randomized controlled trial found that supplementing with vitamin D for 1 year raised testosterone by about 25%. That's a massive difference for something as simple as correcting a deficiency. Omega-3s also support blood flow. And gentlemen, I don't have to explain why circulation matters for performance and confidence. Better blood flow doesn't just benefit the heart, it directly supports sexual health, endurance, and overall vitality. A 2020 study published in Andrology found that men with higher omega-3 levels had significantly higher testosterone and better sperm quality. Another large study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism confirmed that low vitamin D was closely linked to low testosterone, reinforcing why salmon should be on your plate. I think back to a patient of mine, Robert, a 65-year-old who came in exhausted, with low energy and declining bedroom performance. His weight was fine, but his labs showed borderline low testosterone and very low vitamin D. Instead of turning to medication right away, we focused on food. I asked him to eat wild-caught salmon twice a week. 6 months later, he told me he felt like a new man. His energy was back, his mood had improved, and his wife jokingly called me a miracle worker. I reminded them that the real miracle was sitting on their dinner plate. So here's the practical advice. Always choose wild-caught salmon over farmed. Farm-raised salmon often contains fewer omega-3 and can be contaminated with toxins like PCBs that do more harm than good. Prepare it simply, bake, grill, or pan-sear with lemon, garlic, and herbs. Avoid heavy creams or breading that cancel out the benefits. 2 servings a week, about 6 ounces each, is enough to make a meaningful difference. Now let me ask you, when was the last time you ate salmon not for your heart, but for your hormones? Too often, men overlook how critical these healthy fats are for testosterone, energy, and romantic strength. Salmon isn't just good for your cardiovascular system, it's the bridge between strong hormones and a strong heart. If you want your testosterone and your circulation working in harmony, salmon isn't optional, it's essential. Meat number 1, oysters and shellfish. Nature's testosterone secret. At the very top of the list are oysters and shellfish, and for good reason. Oysters are the single richest food source of zinc found in nature, and zinc is the cornerstone of testosterone production. Without adequate zinc, the body simply cannot produce testosterone efficiently. In fact, low zinc is one of the most common yet overlooked causes of declining testosterone in older men. Adding oysters to your diet is like handing your body the exact raw material it needs to restart the hormone engine. But the benefits of oysters and shellfish go beyond zinc. They are also packed with selenium, a mineral that plays a critical role in sperm health, hormone regulation, and fertility. A study published in Fertility and Sterility found that men with higher selenium intake had dramatically better sperm motility and overall reproductive health. These foods are also rich in vitamin B12 and high-quality protein, which support energy levels, brain function, and healthy metabolism. When you put this all together, it's not surprising that oysters have been considered an aphrodisiac for centuries. Modern science now validates what folklore suggested all along. They truly do enhance male vitality. I remember one of my patients, Harold, a 70-year-old widower who had recently remarried. He told me, "Doc, I love my wife, but I don't have the energy I want to keep up." His labs showed borderline testosterone and low zinc. Instead of a prescription, we focused on nutrition. I asked him to start eating oysters once a week. Within 3 months, his testosterone rose nearly 15%. But more than the numbers, Harold came back with a smile and said, "Let's just say I feel like a newlywed again." Sometimes the solution is simple, but it makes a profound difference. Scientific evidence supports stories like Harold's. A 2009 study in nutrition showed that zinc supplementation in deficient men significantly increased testosterone levels within just 6 weeks. Another large analysis confirmed that men with higher selenium intake had a 56% higher sperm count. These are not small changes. They are the kind of improvements that directly affect energy, confidence, and romantic strength. Now think about your own diet. When was the last time you ate oysters, mussels, clams, or crab? For many men, the answer is rarely or never. That's a missed opportunity. These foods are not only rich in testosterone-supporting minerals, but also naturally low in calories, making them ideal for maintaining a healthy weight. Another factor directly tied to hormone balance. The key is to prepare them correctly. Eat oysters raw on the half shell or lightly steamed. Heavy frying destroys delicate nutrients and adds unnecessary fats that cancel out the benefits. If oysters aren't your favorite, mussels, clams, and crab are excellent alternatives. Aim for at least 1 serving a week. Oysters and shellfish truly are testosterone on the half shell. They don't just nourish your body, they restore the energy, confidence, and vitality that many men think are gone for good. So the real question becomes, if something as simple as a plate of oysters could reignite your strength and bring back your romantic edge, why wouldn't you make it a regular part of your diet? So there you have it, gentlemen. The 5 powerhouse meats that can help you protect your testosterone, boost your energy, and keep your romantic strength alive well past 50. We talked about why testosterone naturally declines with age and how the right foods, like turkey, grass-fed beef, bison, salmon, and of course, oysters, can make all the difference. Now here's the takeaway I want you to remember. Aging doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean losing your edge. With the right choices, you can stay strong, sharp, and confident for decades to come. What you put on your plate today can shape the man you'll be tomorrow. Gentlemen, thanks for watching. If you found value in this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with a friend who needs this information, and subscribe so you never miss our weekly tips for living stronger, healthier, and more vibrant after 50. And trust me, we've got some powerful videos coming up that you won't want to miss. Until then, take care of your body, take care of your health, and I'll see you in the next video.